Hello, everybody. Welcome to this new show I'm doing where I'm creating my ideal version of every Beach Boys album. We're going to be going in chronological order, so we're starting with Surfin Safari. So, when I say making my ideal version of each Beach Boys album, that basically means I'm going to be looking at the album itself, all the songs on that, and then any unreleased non album material or unreleased material or non-album material from before the album was released. Uh, and I'm going to be putting that together into what I would deem a better version of this album. So changing up the sequencing of the songs already on there and adding in some new songs, taking some songs out. For most of these original, these first albums, they stuck to a pretty consistent 12 songs, A side, 12 songs, B side. So that's kind of my regulation I'm sticking with. Uh, the amount of songs is going to be the same until we get into the later albums where the amount of songs is, not this consistent thing. I'll get into more freedom there. But also, what's important to note is I'm not just taking the best of these songs or my favorite of these songs and putting them into an album. I'm trying to create an album that fits with what that original version of the album was trying to do. Surfin' Safari is not trying to be Pet Sounds. I'm not going to try to make Surfin' Safari Pet Sounds. I'm just trying to make the best version of Surfin' Safari. So let's talk a little bit about what Surfin' Safari is trying to do. So obviously the most notable thing about Surfin' Safari is that it's the first Beach Boys album. It is, kind of known for being one of the two where they did not double track their vocals. It kind of has more of a garage. It's an earlier feeling album. But what else is there to think about? Because everything of this era is going to have that sound to it. Something I noticed that people don't really talk much about with this album is that it is very comedy based. There's a lot of tracks on here that are jokes or trying to be comedic. And even I laughed out loud while listening to this album, which is rare for comedic music, even by actual comedians. So I feel like that's an interesting thing I'm going to try to preserve. Also, there's kind of an emphasis on other styles of music besides just the surf, besides the pop stuff they're more well known for. There's some more doo-wop-y things in here, though the doo-wop is a lot more prominent in the unreleased material. There's a lot of doo-wop that was not released. Also, the unreleased material is pretty full of instrumentals. But also, we can't just think of this in the context of a future Beach Boys fan going back and revisiting this album. Will it be interesting for them? We also have to think about that this is the only album at the time, so we have to worry about establishing who the Beach Boys are. They're this surf music group, even though they're not really surf, more of a pop version of it. So we want that established as well. Okay? And so besides Surfin' Safari itself, I also listened to the Greatest Beach Boys album, which has a bunch of stuff from this era. There's some stuff off of Lost and Found. There's, obviously the re-release bonus tracks. And then the non-album singles. And the only bootleg I listened to for this is the In the Beginning / Garage tapes, which is kind of an interesting case because, there's no Beach Boy on lead vocal. It is Gary Usher. So there's kind of an interesting thing is, can we include these songs on our ideal album? I thought, they did have, like Day in the Life of a Tree is Jack O'Reilly on lead vocals. He wasn't a Beach Boy. But, that's the band was in a more experimental time. Here they're trying to establish themselves more. At the end of the day, I figured it's just like that the songs in that bootleg I just really love, and I thought they need some representation. So kind of as a compromise, I'm limiting myself to one Gary Usher lead vocal track for this ideal album. So I think that's about all of the pre-information over with. So let's get into my track listing. So track 1, we have Surfin Safari. So Surfin Safari is, their big single title track. And really kind of the closest thing we're gonna get to what the Beach Boys' early sound is. Surfin' Safari really is the only thing here that I think fits well with what they're known for in this era. With their Surfin' USA's, I Get Around, so all those big early hits. And it is, I think, the best song on the original album. I think putting it first makes sense, both for reasons that will become clear later, and also because this is the song people are going to be buying the album for, so it makes sense to have it first so they can hear it, not make them wait. And it is it's them putting their best foot forward, but both of that is really good musically. I come back to the song all the time, and it is the one that most clearly establishes who they are. After that, we got Cuckoo Clock. Cuckoo Clock is an interesting one here, because it is kind of in a weird spot. I just really needed something between Surfin' Safari and the third song, and Cuckoo Clock was kind of on its own, so I'm putting it here. I thought about having some section be full of the comedic stuff from this album, but it just didn't really work with the flow, so I kind of more sporadically placed the comedic offerings here. So you have Cuckoo Clock, kind of representing the more comedic stuff. It's also a pretty fun song. Pretty much has a similar energy to Surfin' Safari, a bit more laid back. So I feel like it works here. And then after that, we get into Moondog, the surf instrumental. There's a lot of other surf instrumentals they had unreleased, but I think Moondog is still the best option. And it makes sense to have one of these surf instrumentals on because we need to establish their surf group, That's their whole thing at this time. So you can see now kind of what's shaping us, that we're establishing who they are at the beginning. So it makes sense to have Moondog here. I just didn't want to immediately follow Surfin' Safari because, they're most known for their vocal talents. They're a vocal group. And so I kind of didn't want an instrumental track to be the second thing on the album. After that, we have 409. A similar case to Surfin' Safari, except I think 409 I like less. It's a good song, but it's nothing too special for me. And it also is what Surfin' Safari is to their other surfing songs of this era. 409 is to their other hot rod rock songs of this era. And so, we have 409 here. You can see this beginning bit is just establishing who the Beach Boys are. The greatest hits kind of the Beach Boys of this. They're high energy, fun, in the sun sound. Next up, Chug-a-Lug. Chug-a-Lug is another really funny song on this. I think what's so good about Chug-a-Lug is it forms such a pertinent scene. It's like I can very well see and feel what's happening in this car with all these guys hanging out drinking root beer. And that way, I feel like it's kind of car tied. It works going off of 409. We're still kind of in the car era. Well, not era, the car section of the album. And I think, unlike some of the other, like, more comedic stuff on this album, Chug-a-Lug does kind of surpass that in being, I think, kind of the best lyrically song on this, which is on the original album. I think at least one other song that's better lyrically. But also what this does is kind of more low energy. It's taking us in to the last song on the A-side, Surfin'. Now, what's interesting about Surfin' is I do not like this song. I don't think it's like horrible or anything, but I just personally don't like listening to it. So why put it on the album? Because I think it's important. It's their first single. It'd be weird if it wasn't on their first album. And then also, they don't have that many songs that are actually about surfing at this time. So I feel like Surfin' is good here. And then Surfin' also works because the A-side, spoiler alert for the B-side, the A-side is this more high energy thing. The B-side is going to be a bit more lower energy. But you can kind of see here, the A-side is their surfing, their cars, their what we think of when we think of the Beach Boys side. And so, we move into the second side with the first song, The Beginning of the End, our first song not included on the original album, which I did not just pick because putting The Beginning of the End on the beginning of the B-side is cool. That's a cool spot for it. And also, because it's their first album, was all the bad stuff in the Beach Boys fated to happen? They put in the beginning of the end on their first album. The title of the song just lends it to being sick. It is also my favorite of the Gary Usher sessions, and my favorite song they have from this time. It also establishes that this is going to be the more doo-wop-y side. So, yeah, it's a very emotional. This is the song I was saying is better lyrically. It goes to the beginning of the end. This emotional ballad to Chug-a-Lug. A song about how much I love root beer. After that, Little Girl, You're My Miss America. Another kind of like ballad, kind of doo-wop-y thing. I don't really know what doo-wop is. I'm kind of just saying anything's doo-wop. But yeah, just kind of in a similar vein. And then in a even similar vein, we got Cindy Oh Cindy, another non-album track. You can see the B-side because it's the doo-wop. We're putting a lot more unreleased stuff. Like I was saying, there's so much doo-wop unreleased. But yeah, both of these are really great songs, really great just doo-wop-y ballads that I find myself coming back to a lot just because they're fun, More fun than when they're trying to be fun, I guess. Next up we have Summertime Blues. Summertime Blues is just kind of here because having a more kind of older rock sound and in Summertime Blues I think is good for the album. It's healthy, I guess. But it's also a fun thing. It's the only thing on the B-side that's going to be about the summer. So it's important to put here. I think it's a fun song. I know some people don't really care for Summertime Blues because it's just a pretty straight cover. But I think it's nice. I think it's fun. After that, we got County Fair. County Fair is weird here. Uh, it's doesn't really fit, but I think it does. I think if you listen to this, Summertime Blues kind of rolls into County Fair, pretty nice. That's kind of Summertime Blues importance here, I guess, is going into County Fair. Which County Fair, I think if we're having comedic stuff, County Fair needs to be on here because County Fair is the funniest song on this album. It's the song I audibly laughed to, the part where the girl just goes, "Loser." Just caught me off guard, and it's funny, and County Fair just needs to be stuck in here somewhere. So it works here, I think. And then the final song, we have Lavender. This is, an acapella, just kind of beautiful little song, which I think is nice. It establishes, oh, these guys actually have, like these beautiful vocal harmonies they can do. Not to diminish stuff like the beginning of the end, Surfin Safari. There's a lot of good stuff on this album, and Lavender is not my favorite thing on this album, but I think it's kind of nice in establishing what the Beach Boys will become, and I think it's a nice ender. It's kind of in the tradition of a lot of Beach Boys albums ending in like this something that's a cappella or something that's like kind of a joke track or something. Lavender, I think, fits well as an ending track. Now, when looking at these days, I'm not a historian, a Beach Boys historian specifically, and so like it's kind of hard to tell. Oh, 1962, was this recorded before or after the album release? If I messed up anything, just tell me, and I guess I'll fix it. Though I suspect you won't tell me because I don't think anyone's going to be watching this. But let's talk about what songs I cut from the album, just so this can be a pretty complete review of the album, I guess, just track by track. Going from least likely to be in to most likely to be in. At the bottom, we got 10 Little Indians, which is so far in my life the worst Beach Boys song I've heard. Now, granted, I have not yet listened to, like, Summer in Paradise or something. But 10 Little Indians just is horrible. This is a song that doesn't need to exist. They thought there was going to be the next big thing was going to be Native American based songs. And it wasn't. So it's kind of just a single they put out that didn't need to be put out. And it's a bad song. They use terms that are like offensive. And I believe offensive at the time. Even though that information that they're offensive might not have been well known to, these young white kids who had probably never interacted with a Native American before. I'm not blaming them for this. I'm not saying, oh, cancel the Beach Boys specifically for 10 Little Indians. There are other things you can cancel them for. But it's just an uncomfortable song to listen to, and then add to that, it's just like a nursery rhyme. It's not anything special. Musically, it doesn't feel like, oh, if only they had better lyrics to this. No. Musically, it's kind of nothing. It's not bad musically, but you don't really get anything. After that is The Shift. Kind of just a boring song. Kind of just doesn't offer anything that I think is not offered by something that can either offer other things as well to the album, or it's just a better song. So, yeah. After that, As I Win, Tells You Loose. This is another song that's a comedic song. And kind of, basically, it was vying for the spot that Cuckoo Clock has. Kind of being that high energy, fun, comedic song to give us a little buffer between Surfin Safari and Moondog. It was really just that I think I like the way Cuckoo Clock sounds musically more than Heads I Win, Tails You Lose. If this were 13 songs, that song may be included. At the end of the day, I just like the other songs on here more. And let's talk about some of the unreleased stuff. I'm not going to go through everything, but just the main things that almost made onto this album were, obviously I limited myself to one song from the beginning of the end. Probably my second favorite would be My Only Alibi. So there's that. Also, like I was saying, there's a lot of instrumentals. Some of these are kind of like jazzy, which is interesting. And I thought those would be nice one of those would be nice to add to the B-side, but I kind of just ended up feeling like everything else kind of flowed better together than adding in like Balboa Blues, which is probably my second favorite instrumental after Moondog from this era. And then with like Moondog is kind of just my favorite of the surf instrumentals. So something like, the Beach Boys Stomp isn't going to be added. Besides that, I don't think there's really anything else in contention for being added. So, yeah, that's my ideal Surfin' Safari from the Beach Boys. In the description, I have a playlist of this ideal album if you want to give it a listen and, see what you think. Is it better? Is it worse than Surfin' Safari? Who knows? I do, and I think it's better.